Hello and welcome to another episode of Page Burners. We are working our way through the Malazan books, currently through Deadhouse Gates by Steven Erikson, which is the second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. We'll eventually get to an Esselmont book, but probably after Midnight Tides. My name is Varsha. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain. We meet every week for these discussions. We work our way through about 100 pages each week in the mass market paperbacks. Today's discussion is going to be chapters 16 through 18. And everybody will go around introducing themselves and mention the thing that they're most excited to discuss today. For myself, the topic that I most want to really hash out to the tiniest detail, even though I don't really think it matters, is the staves of the nameless ones. I want to know. I want to know everything about them, which I don't think we will get, but I want to try. Shannon, could you continue the introductions?
Yeah, my name's Shannon, and I most want to talk about probably all of chapter 16, but if I had to nail it down to something, I'd say maybe the when Shaikh Reborn makes everybody read from the book of Drishna. I think that's kind of interesting. Some of the things they see. And then I'll pass it on to Steve.
Yeah, I'm Steve from the Patreon podcast and Steve Talks Books on YouTube. I am most excited. Well, actually, I have a question because I feel like I've missed something on what ascended actually means. Are we supposed to know yet? So I'm curious about that. But yeah, excited to be here, and as always, grateful to be a part of the group. So, Carl, you are up, sir.
This hill for this episode only because oh man, Arium is what I want to talk about. Arium and Mappo and Trimmer lore and everything that goes down there. It's just fabulous stuff. Really top tier writing and top tier fantasy, and I am just blown away reading this all over again.
Yeah, chapter 16 was something else. And I don't know, like if I had to really rank Deadhouse Gates in all 10 of my books, like favorites of where it stood, it would probably be close to the bottom from my first read.
Wow.
From my first read, just because of how much I felt like I struggled through the military stuff. I might have gotten used to it by the third book, but there was a lot to love. It's and I when I say bottom, I mean like it's on a relative scale, right? I love all these books deeply, and I had grown to love Deadhouse Gates too when I read it. But now as I'm rereading it, I cannot remember why I would put it at the bottom. Chapter 16 just made me feel all the things. You know how Ikarium talks about about having this knot and of feelings that he doesn't know what to do with, or something to that effect. That was me after chapter 16. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I think it's these chapters especially were pretty heartfelt. Not to derail, but we do have an exciting announcement to make, right?
Oh yes.
Yes.
Do we want to do that now or save it for the end?
No one's listening to the end. Let's do it.
That's true. Well, yeah, we may lose Steve to the sleep warn before then also. So, yeah, let's do it now.
Give me Steve.
Yeah, so just a quick note for anyone listening to the end, if I'm not here at the end because the warn of sleep takes me before usually we finish recording. But one of us will say a word, and if someone listens to the very end, then DM me the word that whoever says, and we will send you something fun. I don't know, a book or something cool. Anyway, the announcement, that's just to get you to listen to the very end. The announcement is that we are fortunate enough to have Steven Erikson on the podcast at the end of Deadhouse Gates. So we are going to speak with him after we finish Deadhouse Gates. So you will all listen to that probably about the middle of April, I think, give or take. So yeah, we're excited to be able to speak to Steven Erikson and ask him questions. And if there's any questions you have, be sure to leave them in the comments. If you're on YouTube, leave them on the comments below, or send us a DM on the forums, or create if we have a thread on the forums to add your questions in. But yeah, we're really excited to pick his brain, and we're very grateful that he's spending his time with us. A bunch of randos just reading his book. So we really appreciate it.
Absolutely. This was very exciting news. And, we've got a bunch of good questions already. We have a shared Google Doc. So if you have a question, better be good. Bring your A game.
No pressure. First we ask you to listen to the end and give us a word that we would have spoken by the end of the episode.
I'm also going to make a point of alienating the entire audience, not only by being an apologist for a multi-time genocider, but also just by being really brusque and rude to them. So, y'all, if you don't bring good questions, I'm just saying, I will be very judgmental.
Yep. So this is the podcast that is going to be therapy for you for your what is the word? Parasocial relationship building habit. This will get you to stop.
That's right. I forgot that was our commitment. Yeah, that's great.
Anyway, chapter 16. Where did we start? I forget. So much happens in those chapters. And every week I feel like I don't actually say it out loud, but I think to myself, this is so good. How can it possibly get better? I know it gets better because I know how this book ends. But damn, this chapter was something else.
I also definitely had that feeling this week with chapter 16 in particular. Just again, the Shaikh stuff was awesome, and then Trimmer Lore just like really blew me away. I'm like, I can't believe this isn't the climax of the novel. Like, there's just still so much to go. It's crazy. And some of this stuff I know will be particularly impactful in these last couple of weeks. Things that stood out to me even on my first read. I was like you, Varsha, where my first time through, this was, definitely in the bottom few of the books. I still liked it like you, but again, the military stuff just like didn't work as well for me. I wasn't quite connecting with it as much, and I really have on this read. And I am just blown away by everything with Duiker and the Wiccans and their sad push across the ford here in this section. Is that how the chapter starts? Is that where we want to start?
I think so. The butterflies, right? This is where we meet the butterflies. And oh my
yes.
God, those descriptions of the butterflies.
Beautiful and haunting, and also a nice little symbol for, they've reached the other side. They've crossed Raraku, and they are transformed, right? Butterflies are a symbol of metamorphosis, and that's what all these characters now have undergone. And then, of course, they are not just a symbol of metamorphosis, but also, all the dead they've left changed along the way, right? Filling up the river, clogging the river. What a horrible, horrible image.
And it is horrible and yet hauntingly beautiful, if that makes sense. The layers of yellow. Just thinking of butterflies, it's just, there's something so pretty. But then they are sort of, suffocating them now. Duiker is talking about how their march will be slowed just by the sheer number of butterflies there are. That's just they've got to be up in your face for them to slow your march down. And then they're like, and they're slowing the rowing of the boat. They're basically like, slush at the bottom of the river. The scale of that, the magnitude of all of that, that's brilliant. And yet the images that are evoked by that, they're sort of almost hauntingly beautiful. And it's such a tension there between beauty and horror that's so well done. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that I echo everything you just said, and this book at large is definitely kind of a constant balancing act between beauty and horror. And I wonder, as I'm reading this, I mean, it's impossible to discuss this with just the context of these first two books, but animals distinctly play a much bigger role in this book than in Gardens of the Moon, the wildlife, right? Like they're in almost every scene, playing both like a plot relevant role, but also just a symbolic and atmospheric role. And I just found that very interesting, particularly given the thematics around human beings' animal nature and the violence that's a major part of that. The constant kind of struggle for supremacy embodied by the Path of Hands. And I'm very curious now to see if the wildlife is like strictly a major thing in this book, or if that's also like a through line in later books as well, because I don't recall animals playing as so much of a part. And it's definitely really stood out to me on this read through how they're everywhere. We're constantly discussing the animals all around our humans and humanoid characters. And I mean, it's just, to me, it seems very intentional.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually noticing that too. And I think I was more noticing the insects than the animals, but I think I saw Erikson say somewhere that that's a seven cities evokes like insects and like these kind of creatures.
Yes. Yeah.
Sure, I'm severely paraphrasing what he said, but that's the other thing. Like the way these creatures are used for imagery, I think it's so brilliant. There was one scene that I forgot to bring up last week. There was a Rizan. How do you say that lizard name? Rizan. I'll call it
I don't
Rizan.
know. Yeah.
That was snatching at a cape moth, and I couldn't remember whether the Rizan were supposed to be images or like harbingers of death, the way cape moths were. But assuming they are not, that's almost like sort of symbolizing Coltane's repeated victories to a certain extent, like the snatching from the mouth of death aspect of it, the snatching of the victories from there. But and then all these butterflies, I mean, they don't, for all their beauty, they don't seem to be symbols of anything good.
I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know if it's inherently good, but they are very much symbols of transformation, I feel. And, I do think some people probably come out of the transformation stronger or better. Although I would say very few come out probably morally better, morally more moral. Certainly not Fellison, but she has had a tough road.
Yeah.
So I had a question about those butterflies since we're talking about them. So they're all over the place here, and then at the end of this chapter, we see that they take away Sormo's soul, I guess, when he dies.
Right.
Was that always the point of them being there? Like, how did that? How? What do you guys think? Like, were they there to do that, or did they do that because they happened to be there?
Interesting.
Good question.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about causality in this world. Like, is it? Well, I mean, I don't think it's a prediction thing. If anything, like it's probably that the sense of imminent death might be pulling them there. But just Sormos, I mean, he does have a powerful soul, we learn. So
Okay, here's my theory now, going off of, or my reading of it, I should say, because it's not a theory. It's not something that's ever revealed, I don't believe. I think that maybe in some way those butterflies are maybe not literally the souls of the dead, the people who have died along the way in the chain of dogs,
Oh,
but in some way connected to them. Again, as sort of the you have all these butterflies that kind of, they die, right? And these symbols of transformation over at the end of the desert, and maybe it is then kind of like all of these Wiccan souls, all of these lost souls coming to welcome Sormo, into joining them. That's just kind of the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know. I'd have to like really kind of look through it all and see if they appear again in the book, but that's the first thing that comes to mind.
The only thing I
Interesting.
was thinking is that we did see how, since early on, Sormo had been working with the spirits of the land, and in fact working against a lot of the people of the land because,
Oh, yeah.
the people had forgotten and all this stuff. So I wondered if maybe it had some connection to that. Maybe this was the spirit of the land kind of helping him out, when he's about to die, taking him with them, since he was somebody that was working with them and hadn't forgot him and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. That was just my crackpot theory.
No, I like that even more. I think that actually makes more sense. That that they're tied to the land. He has been working with the land, right? And his magic has sort of become tied to it in a way that it hadn't been because he wasn't a native. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I guess a sort of follow-up discussion point I have is we learned earlier that there were 11 crows and they took 11 days to take his soul away from the body for rebirth, right? But now I think all the butterflies work all at once to consume his soul. I guess that's the question. Like, what do you think happened to the soul? Is he still going to be able to be reborn, or is this a different end? Or maybe he doesn't go back to the Wiccans, he's reborn as something else, or maybe his soul is split into a million different parts now and he's sort of like dispersed into the universe, like some stories that I can't mention because of spoilers.
It's a great question. This is one of the things I love about this series, just as like a fantasy fan, is how the magic is treated, that there is so much room for interpretation, and you have these really powerful, miraculous, or sometimes horrifying, or sometimes both events that you really can't have when the magic is better defined, or there are clear lines delineating what you can and can't do, and what the rules of the universe are. Because this is, what a great, just powerful scene with really captivating imagery. And Shannon has touched on something that I think is just like, it's very interesting, right? It's something you can really talk about and explore. It's not laid out for you so cleanly, right? It's not like just like a really hardcore plot beat, so much as like an event open to interpretation.
Yeah, and I love the changeability of that. I think that's a great point, what you said, Carl, but also this part of like, and I think I'm just sort of repeating your point in a different way, but the fact that like it was crows before and now butterflies
Right.
sort of serve that role. I think that's just so amazing, right? Like even the practitioners of magic, or the people who think they know what they're doing, they are still working with powers that they don't fully understand, and that's what makes it magic, right? Like as far as I know, crows take away their souls, but now butterflies, and everybody's surprised by that. And I guess we didn't see Nil and Nether in the aftermath of that previous scene where they used the horse to power a whole bunch of horses to let them climb uphill. But you see them now with like blackened hands, and we don't know whether they knew that they'd have to deal with that aftermath afterwards. And yeah, it's just, I guess it leaves scope for a lot you can do with magic, but it's never in a way that feels sort of forced, like it's helping out where, well, helping out where it shouldn't or whatever. Like, at least I didn't think so in my first reading of it.
No, I mean the magic, I do feel there are times where there are what you could call Deus Ex Machinas, but usually there is at least some foreshadowing. Because I don't feel that like that's inherently a negative or a critical term. You know, a lot of stories have what you could reasonably call a Deus Ex Machina. You know, it used to be a trope in like classical mythology and plays, and so, you know, like anything, it's just really how you use it. Does it feel cheap? You know, does it feel like the characters just get out of every problem by sheer, you know, luck, divine interference? Gardens of the Moon, I think, plays with this in a really fun way, where the whole notion of chance is one of the driving forces, one of the themes of the book. And so, you know, at the same time, also it's interesting because divine interference is more often actually a bad thing, which is maybe why when it helps the characters, it feels earned or feels satisfying, is cathartic, as opposed to frustrating. Because, you know, a majority of the time the gods are the enemies, right? The gods are pushing up against them and making their lives hell and possessing them. I mean, that's basically the entire plot of the first book. So yeah, no, I think it's great.
Yeah. Was there anything else interesting with the Duiker and the river crossing?
Well,
I
here
guess
at the beginning of chapter 16, we also get, well, we get to find out that Bent didn't eat that little Hangie's
Oh yeah,
lapdog. He's still hanging
Yes.
out with him.
the lapdog is
And
now a
not
mouth
only that, but
dog.
the little mutt's gone native, and now he's like running with cattle dogs and acting like he leads them, which then brings me to Stormy, Gessler, and Truth catch up with him. They I guess popped out of their warren somewhere over on near to this place, and so now they come out and meet everybody. And I thought that was really interesting. A lot of the stuff with them, we learn a little bit about Stormy and Gessler's past. That apparently they've been knocked down in rank because, what was it? Stormy used to be an adjunct to a fist, and Gessler, was he a captain or just a sergeant? Might have just been a sergeant. But they definitely had higher rank than they have now, and so it kind of hints at these guys were old guard Malazans, and there's a lot more to them.
They worked under the emperor, right? They worked under Kellenbed when he was mortal, which is an interesting tidbit.
And
I
then
mean,
there's the whole
sorry, go ahead.
You go, Varsha.
Oh yeah, I was saying, I think Duiker noticed the rank loss of Gessler, right, in their first interaction, because he had sort of, not stains, I guess, the imprint of the stars that he had before. But yeah, it was a fun conversation when Coltrane tried to promote them. And the
And
three of
punches
them,
him in the face.
yeah,
Breaks his hand because it turns out that Stormy, Gessler, and Coltrane, and I guess Truth too, have all on their way to ascending.
yeah, they're all bronze
which I guess would bring us to Steve and what he wanted to talk about.
Steve's got a hand
Segue.
Good segue there. Yeah, so I read that portion of it about him being he's ascending, and then I realized I don't really know what that means. What is ascending? What does ascending mean? What is it, or do we know yet?
So ascending, as far as I remember, I don't think it's ever literally like defined. Like we're not given like a hard definition, but the way I think you can read it, the way it's intended, is that it's, you know, people who, through whatever, you know, cosmic change, you know, something about, you know, their actions and the way the people around them perceive them and the events, you know, the things that they undergo leads to them ascending to like a higher form of existence where they are often immortal, maybe always immortal, and just not, you know, the lesser being they were before. They have greater magical power oftentimes, and often it comes with kind of a physical change. They look different, and so it's really just about kind of like, you know, if you've ever played like Dungeons and Dragons or something, it's like leveling up to like a top level character. And the difference being that because this isn't a game, it's not like you do that through just like hard experience points or whatever. It's like often you make a certain amount of people like worship the ground you walk on, or you undergo some magical metamorphosis or something like that, and you know, quote unquote, ascend to a higher power.
Oh, okay. So like, it's like living. So yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah, I remember a little like a year or two ago, I heard somebody like explaining like old school D&D, and how like, you know, the higher levels you basically become a god, and then that's actually, that was when it clicked like what this was, that because this was all based on, it wasn't based on D&D, it was based on what Gertz or something, but it's similar concepts. But yeah, like when I heard that, I realized that's exactly what Erikson and Esselman are doing here, is that these are just think of them as like player characters that have leveled all the way up to level 20 or 30 or whatever it is, and they're essentially, some of them literally become gods, and some of them just have godlike power and are wandering around.
Yeah,
but that's, you know,
to clarify that that's exactly what Shannon's saying, is the difference between gods and ascendants is like all gods are ascendants, but not all ascendants are gods.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that you mentioned like leveling up, it makes more sense. But so it's not 1 to 100. It's like leveling up is like 1 through 50, but you have to go each level at a time. Kind of, or
in a
is
way.
it?
I mean, it's not like you grant like again, it's not like there's like experience points. Like it's not like a hard thing, you know. Like you can't like calculate it.
Right.
It just like you go through certain experiences that make you evolve in some way.
Yeah.
Is there
and
a
I think
good,
a lot of times in Malazan, I think you can see how reputation plays a big role.
Yes.
Like Stormy and Gessler, they're legendary. People know them. Like they're not just, you know, like the soldiers revere these two guys as badass soldiers, and Kellenved and Dancer, same thing. So like that, I think that plays a role in it too. Is like that there's a certain, if you have a certain notoriety or a certain fame, I think that definitely seems to play into it.
So do any of you know of a good XP spot for farming shapeshifters?
I do not, other than Trimmer lore at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to say kind of on this topic is when Coltane punches Stormy? Is it Stormy or Gessler?
Gessler.
It is also notable that he's able to actually break Gessler's nose. That everyone's like, shouldn't, like, obviously it broke his hand. This was like like punching metal. At the same time, if it was that hard, how the hell was he able to do that? You know, is he just that physically strong? That's not usually how things work, right? It's just something to keep in mind. He's able to punch a near ascendant and seriously injure him. What does that say about Coltane?
And Nil and Nether are completely shocked, right? I like that exchange from, I don't remember who was in that conversation, but Nil and Nether, I think Dwecker realizes that the Wiccans, it's not that they know what he's doing and they're being respectful of him. They are also holding him in such awe that they don't really interact or understand him fully. So their levels of awe of him increase when they realize that he was able to break an ascendance. Not wait, is ascendant someone in the process of ascending or someone who has ascended?
An ascendant is someone who has ascended.
Okay,
Yeah.
so never mind
Someone
that
in
word.
the process of ascending.
Oh,
I
really?
think they literally say he's as close to ascending as they've ever seen or something.
So they're an
So-
ascendant. So ascendant, the word, is it the process of ascending or someone who has already ascended? Already
Well, I think
ascended.
when it's like a noun, it's someone who's already ascended.
Okay, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's not the word I want to use for Gessler and Stormy, but anyway, so Coltrane is probably maybe more powerful than them, or at least as powerful. But also they've come out bronze-skinned like Borden was. So do you think if he had lasted longer in that fire, he would have, maybe not have died in the other fire?
Don't know.
Don't know.
I mean, yeah, that's one of those, like, it's impossible to know for certain, but I do think both his shortened and less, like, complete cooking, you might say. He wasn't thoroughly cooked. But I also suspect that Gessler and Stormy, as Shannon has spoken about, just have a bigger reputation. And in this world, the way people perceive you influences how you actually are, which I would also again say is points to how Coltrane may be as powerful as he may or may not be, right? I mean, I think that leads to a great scene. Maybe we can transition to Shaik / Velison, where Shaik is talking. This is toward the end of her section here, but after she's like getting everyone to kneel to her, and she's talking with Leoman, I believe it is, about Coltrane and the chain of dogs and how he's pulled off multiple miracles, and they're like, well, surely I think they say something about like, she's like they're they will follow him and do anything that he commands. They essentially like worship him because he has led them so far and so well. And she asked Leoman, like, have you ever served under someone like that? And Leoman says he does not. And like they're like, we can't understand it because we've never experienced that before. I think it's particularly potent too because Shaik is supposed to be that for the rebellion, right? But we find out very quickly with Shaik's memories within Velison, cannot trust her most powerful allies. She can't trust anyone except Toblakai because he seems to be a zealot, and Haboric just because Haboric cares about her.
Like Heboric's barbs about what do you want after this book is open? Apocalypse unending, an inherent contradiction.
I do love all of their dynamics there. Just like the interplay between those characters is great. Haboric and the Toblakai in particular, I just really like their hatred for each other.
Yeah,
and also you get the sense that they both respect each other in a way, which it's delightful. A lot of great lines between them.
Yeah, and you see how Felicin, I guess it's maybe she's half Shaik at this point. The four voices that she talks about, the Toblakai with pure faith, Heberic who sees the world with eyes more Leoman who sees the world with eyes more cynical than Heberic. Heberic, she is predicting that he'll one day discover his faith anew. Which, like, did he just like discover his faith 2 seconds later? I forget what
Yes, I was gonna
happens.
say. she is spurring that journey by telling him, is like, listen, this was planned. Like, you know, your God has never left you. It was, you know, the worshipers cut off your hands because, you know, they didn't really know what the God wanted, but the God was not going to leave you handless, effectively, which is, that's another powerful scene I found, particularly given that Boric inadvertently lashed Finner, his god, to the mortal realm. And now that god is vulnerable.
And about Felicin, she says, kindness yearned for behind every cruel word she utters. She believes in nothing. And again, I mean, I know this is Felicin speaking, but it's the goddess through her, right? And the transition was interesting between when we went from maybe that she's going to pretend to be Shaik Reborn to actually becoming Shaik Reborn, and she hasn't opened the book yet, and but she has a power about her now, which can, like, at the very least, I think the goddess is using her as a tool, if not like as if she's not actually reborn, she's working through her at the very least.
So here is what my opinion is of this, is that it is intentionally really ambiguous about how much Felicin is in control versus how much Shaik is, and how much Shaik is using Felicin versus how much Felicin is using Shaik. I think obviously it becomes clear by the end of that section that Shaik is in fact within Felicin. Shaik is reborn within Felicin. There's nothing ambiguous about that. However, we're invited to question whether Felicin's personality change is Shaik possessing her, or whether that's Felicin putting on airs, essentially creating a new personality for herself because of this new situation. And we're invited to think that because Habork literally says that. He like tells her, is like, you know, this isn't the goddess, this is you, you know, acting. And I think that that is very interesting, particularly in parallel with the other girl who has been possessed by a divinity and is dealing with multiple personalities inside her and trying to get to the core of who is she deep down, right? And obviously I'm talking about Apsalar, aka Sari, aka the Fisher girl, who again has a similar sort of confrontation over who she really is, who's really in control. You know, she's also had kind of a transformation. Like if you read the passages with her when she comes to life again at the end of Gardens of the Moon, the way she speaks is completely different than the way she speaks towards the end of this book. It's like she has also had a personality change. And I'll admit that in some ways this is tough for me as a reader, because I do kind of get whiplash when I read her chapters, where she seems so like sweet and normal and young at the beginning of the book, and then she disappears for a while with her dad, and then she comes back and she's suddenly like very mission driven and colder and very formal in the way she talks. And that sort of, for me personally, emotionally, I just kind of felt whiplash about that. But I think it is very intentional, and again is very much in parallel with Felicin, who likewise is now speaking completely differently, acting completely differently. And, you know, it's questionable about how much of that is herself versus Shaik acting through her. And I don't know if there's a right answer, because I kind of get the sense that like there's kind of a weird interplay flowing, you know, amidst them, and that it's like an ongoing process. And so whatever stability will be reached, whatever balance has not been reached yet. And so the personality is in flux.
There's also the question of how much memory makes a person, right? With Apsalar, when during that conversation with Icarium, when she tells him what she remembers from before she was possessed. One, she remembers, I think, visiting her mother's grave with her father, and then she remembers Riga, and then she remembers Cotillion, and it made me sad that even the only thing that she could remember from before she was possessed was possibly one of the saddest things from before then. And I think with Felicin, it now she has acquired Shaik's personality. So sorry, not personality, her memories, right? And she seems to have acquired at least her memories. And Apsalar's memories have been seem to have been driving her current personality to a certain extent, and maybe we'll see something similar with Felicin. And it's also about accepting that for yourself, right? And we haven't had a look into Apsalar, and I don't remember how much we get to look at Felicin after she has accepted this role of Shaik. I mean, we actually do when she has that thing with the taming of the mages, right? And she's sort of leaning into that personality. And Felicin, I think, is maybe just because of who she is or what she went through, is leaning into it maybe more easier than Apsalar, or we are willing to think that because Apsalar was taken forcibly, and like we don't get a look into who she is. Like, is she surrendering to the two other personalities that she was subjected to before this? And there were some other very interesting Felicin Apsalar comparisons in this section, which one was when the father tells, I forget whom, but he tells her there is still a child, there's a child still there, about Apsalar, which about her too, it is so easy to forget. She must be still in her late teens, early 20s at the latest. I know, I think late teens, and same with Felicin, like not even late teens. And we are being reminded in the last chapter, we were reminded about how the armor hid a child, and same with Apsalar's, I guess, current armor, so to speak. And then there was the other thing she said about how she and Icarium are surrounded by people who want to help but don't really know how, which is what you can say about Felicin too, with Heberic and Borden. So yeah, I feel like Apsalar is a great character to look at Felicin through.
Absolutely. I also just want to highlight something that you said that I hadn't even like clicked with me, that the little girl that Felicin meets, her sort of first connection within the apocalypse camp, is this little girl wearing armor. That is not the obvious like symbolism of that hadn't even clicked for me. There's like, that's Felicin, right? Felicin has hidden herself within a suit of armor.
Yeah.
The child is hidden within the suit of armor, and it can't really protect her, but it's what she has, and that, wow, I had like just skated right over that, partially because I just found the scene very touching, and, do think it's sweet, Felicin connecting with this little girl, where like, I obviously like saw the parallels between them in some ways, but I hadn't realized the overt symbolism there. That's great point.
Oh, I actually had forgotten about the child in the armor. You brought that up. I meant the thing that she was talking about, where she's like symbolically covering herself with the armor. But yeah, I think the thing about the child, that's really cool now that you mention it.
Well, there you go.
And wait, yeah, I think I said everything about Apsalar that I wanted to. Do you guys have anything else? Should we talk about Icarium, Mapo, Tremolor, the nameless one stuffs?
I don't know, Shannon, do you have anything you wanted to say about Felicin and all that stuff?
I liked the scene, and I liked she opens the book by making them open the book, and I did like some of the stuff there. I liked how, last week we talked about how Heboric had warned Felicin about Leomin, and he seems very fanatical, but we see here he opens the book and it's blank. Every page is blank, And I think that's pretty blatant symbolism that, he's not a real believer. He thinks he is, but he clearly, something's off with him and his belief in this rebellion. And then Toblakai opens it up, and warm light bathes his face, tears filling his eyes, and it's just such beauty. She whispered to him, "A beauty makes you weep." And then, so we don't know what it is, but it's some kind of beauty. And then, do you know why you feel such sorrow? No, not yet. One day, close the book, Toblakai. So some kind of beauty made him feel sorrow. We don't really know what, but it kind of hints that there's definitely something deeper to Toblakai, because he seems pretty shallow, like a fanatical believer that just wants to kill everything. And then I really love how, he takes a swipe at Haborik, and Haborik puts him on his butt. I thought
I forgot
I'd
about
forgotten
that.
about that.
That is
I was
great.
like, wow.
And
so
this
I
man
think
has just killed a soul-taken bear.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I think if Toblakai already wanted to kill Haborik all the time, now it's even more. So I just thought all that was neat, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, let's just like briefly touch on Toblakai a little more, because we do learn some interesting things about him, many of which, Shannon, you just mentioned. But another thing that maybe is easy to skirt over is that he recognizes the white bear that he killed, the soul taking. I mean, it's not he recognized the person. He didn't know the person. He just killed them. But the animal he knew, right? Meaning polar bears are familiar to him, meaning he's from a northern climate. So how did he end up in a desert? Right? Interesting. I mean, I think we had some mention of maybe like being from a different part of the continent earlier in the book or something like that, but we get a little more info about kind of where he's from and what, in a very subtle way. I think a lot of that is slowly becoming unraveled, and we, as Shannon has said, there's definitely more depth to him than just his zealotry or his lust for violence, and that clash between the beauty that makes him sad. I think there's some interesting stuff there.
Yep. Toblakai, interesting.
It's hard to talk about him without. We'll get there.
Okay. We'll get there.
I guess the last little thing, just to,
Mm-hmm.
for any first time readers, we should just touch on is that, the three kind of generals, you could say, main allies of Shaikh are worth just briefly touching on. Bidithal, who, if you read earlier in the book, some of the epigraphs are quoting him.
Mm.
And we also learn that he is a child raping scum, and that he found Shaikh when she was a child and effectively scarred her in the same way that Felisin was scarred. And I think that very clearly you can see that is what kind of their spiritual connection, right? They were both girls who were harmed by men sexually. And in some ways, it seems like Shaikh had it even worse because she was, they allude to it. It's fairly explicit, although they don't use these words, but Bidithal committed like genital mutilation to young Shaikh, which is, obviously horrific. So he sucks. And then we also meet, oh my gosh, what is the woman's name? Who keeps trying to poison Shaikh.
Oh, there's a woman?
Isn't it a woman? Isn't the second one a woman?
I didn't realize that it was a woman.
Or is it a man? Is it 3 men? Maybe it's 3 men.
I thought it was 3 mages. I didn't register their genders, but yeah, go ahead, sorry. The one, yeah,
Shannon,
the one
you're
who kept
muted.
trying to poison, and she kept transmuting it, and the guy kept. I mean, I read him as a guy, but kept
No, you
thinking,
may be right. I may
yeah,
just be misremembering. I may have just like randomly made her a woman in my head, him a woman. But and then last we have Lorik, right? Who is the one that she kind of trusts, even though she knows he's not a true believer, and is like just a hardcore pragmatist. And she likes him, right? She feels affection for him as he kneels before her.
yeah,
So those are, interesting characters to keep your eye on. Although obviously with a cast as big as this, it's hard to keep track of everyone. But
yeah, and we'll be reminded later. But
exactly,
it was a good introduction to.
I highlight them because they're not gone. This isn't a one chapter, one and done thing.
Yeah. I was trying to find the section where we encountered them. It's fine. But yes, I enjoyed that introduction to these characters, especially Lorik. I think was fun.
It to me is also just like in terms of how to reveal that Shaik really has been reborn in Felicin. Like that's the one time where it becomes like, or not the one time, the first time it becomes abundantly clear that is the case, that she is within Felicin, and Felicin isn't just like bullshitting, because we see her memories, right? Her memories come through Felicin. And the rest of the time, Felicin, while we've been in her head, her point of view, it's kind of been kept at a distance. It's been left more ambiguous about exactly what's going on. And then she does the big sand magic thing by raising the whirlwind up into a big, she calls it her banner.
Wait, did she raise that up? I thought that just happened because of her acceptance of the thing. She actually made it happen.
I thought it was an intentional act on her part.
I mean, yeah, it's possible. It's possible that I missed that. The possibility is possible. A likely likelihood. Like to quote past Shannon, I think you're muted. Yeah.
I said number 2 was Febrile. In the thing he's notable for is being a coward and the figurehead of all the traitors in her camp.
There you go.
Got it.
So, but still not worse than Bidithel.
No.
Imagine that.
Yeah, we start with the worst. That's for sure.
So did the whirlwind start as they were walking back to the camp, or was it when they arrived? I don't know. I'm calling it camp. The city, the oasis.
Well, I don't think the whirlwind went anywhere. It's just they were then within they were near its edge, and then it kind of came in, encircled them fully, and then rose up.
Right. I was asking at what point it started. Like, was it as she was arriving, or after she showed up, then the fireworks happened and the whirlwind came up?
Haven't they been in the calm for a while? Like, I think they've been within the whirlwind already, and the whirlwind hasn't stopped. It's been constantly going, and they've just been within the calm and the storm. Because there's that calm we know that's at the center where the army is supposed to be.
Yeah.
The camps.
Wait, didn't the whirlwind quiet down for a bit when she when they escaped? Oh, okay. You know what? I thought the whirlwind just stopped for a while and I think it did when they were deciding whether or not Felicin should open the book, and they even talk about how they should wait to reach the camp to open the book so that they don't walk in the sand again, like walk in the dust again. So I think the whirlwind sort of quieted down for a while, and then it rose up again when she took on this mantle of Shaik Reborn. But I don't remember at which point. Like when it was it after all the prophesying she engaged in with Toblakai and Heberic and group, or was it after she arrived at the camp and then sort of everybody knelt down to her? But I like the notion of the banner, the whirlwind, like the main point. Like I guess the detail is not important, but I like the main thing, what you said, Carl, that raising up this image of raising up the whirlwind as a banner. That is quite intensely powerful.
Yeah, I mean, because she describes it as like anyone on the continent will see it. It's going to go so high and be so big. Like, that's crazy to imagine. And even if she's somewhat exaggerating, like, it's wild to think, you're just standing and suddenly, in the distance, you just see this enormous, like, billowing. It'd probably be hard to even tell what it was, but just this, like, burnt ochre, gray, yellow, spot in the sky.
Mm. It's almost like it's come back more powerful than when it not quite died, but paused for a bit. So,
Cool.
what happened?
Tremolor?
Tremolor, yes. The thing that I actually most wanted to talk about.
It's so cool. It is so unbelievably cool. I do remember being, like, blown away by it on my first read. I mean, I love, like, kind of creepy, almost haunted places, whether they're like literally a haunted house or, like, a creepy magical castle or something like that. And the Azath houses are just such an interesting spin on them, that they, like, devour giant, big sources of power. And they're, like, all natural. They're like tree trunks, filled with roots. And the way this one's described is like a maze leading into it, with all the mazes having, like, this maze of roots that's, like, eaten all of these creatures, most of whom are not human and may not even be, like, humanoid. That Fiddler notices that and is just like, wow, we are so small. Humans have been around for such a short period of time compared to everything else. It's so good.
And this house has been trapping awful humanoid creatures for much longer than I've been alive.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I love this notion of the moving roots and this part of it where the Azath house seems to be in distress of some sort, and I guess we might think at this point that it's because of all the soul taken that are showing up, or maybe not. Maybe it was already in distress and it was the soul taken were being brought here to help it some other way. I don't know. I'm unclear about what's putting the house in distress.
I think it's
Mhm.
Ikarian, isn't it?
Is it? He's sensing its distress, but is it he who's
Maybe.
causing it? That would be interesting.
Certainly, I mean, I don't know if he's causing it, but he is a threat to it, as has been established by Mappo and everyone, that, like, there's the risk that if he hulks out, he will kill the Azath house, and then who knows what'll happen. I'm curious, Steve, what all did you like? Those are dense pages. Like, there's a lot that happens there. What was your thought, your feeling about that section? Like, what all did you feel like you tracked? Was there anything that confused you?
On chapter 17 or 18?
I just Tremor lore in general within the Azath house.
Well, when they got into the maze is when it got really. I don't remember it being this dark. I remember this being a book that I really enjoyed the first time I read it. I remember it was probably one of my favorites of the series. I really like book 4, but we'll get to that later. But it's really dark and it's really intense. That's really what I kind of took away from it, because I read it and then I went back and listened to the audio of the chapter, and it almost added to the kind of the anticipation and the tension and the build up, and it almost sounded like a horror novel.
Yeah.
Of the all the arms like sticking out, and it's like a haunted house almost that they're going into. Like the maze is haunted, and they have to somehow find a way through it, and all these different obstacles are on the way. It was almost like I don't know if anyone remembers the game Wizardry from a long time ago. It almost just like a D&D campaign kind of thing. Like all these different obstacles are on the way, and they have to find a way to overcome each obstacle. But it was really intense. I think that's the one thing that I took away from that. Just like at the end of chapter 16 was really intense. Just the violence and the death and the just it read like a war novel, it almost read like but it doesn't feel like a fantasy novel. It feels real. It feels like it's really happening. There's like this disconnect you can usually make with certain types of fiction, and it didn't feel like you could make that separation the way that it was explained. And it read the same way in Tremolor as just like the dread, and almost like, I mean, again, making a comparison to almost like the judging eye, not to give any spoilers, but just the deeper you go, the more difficult things get, and there's no turning back, kind of thing.
People who know,
Yeah.
know.
If you know, you know.
Okay, I think I know which part you're referring to. I was trying to remember, but forests. Anyway, yeah, sorry, I wasn't going to say anything. Go ahead.
No, like the maze specifically is when we get into the maze, that reminded me over like the second half of the judging eye, if you remember the
When you go into the deep dark.
Yeah, the deep dark. Just like it was like a haunted house that going into, and all the different creatures, and I think the different types of creatures that are there that are imprisoned almost made it worse, like almost made it more weird, because it all these, because you wonder how they got there, like how did these weird creature types get in this prison or get in this predicament.
I love the mystery, right? The mystery around the Azath houses, it does add to the like creepy atmosphere. And it's strange to think of, something that seems so natural, right? That it's made of roots. There's a lot of kind of earthen imagery associated with it, going back to Gardens of the Moon, although this is obviously a different Azath house, but it is scary, it is, we don't know why it's there, what its purpose is, other than some sort of balance. But even then, like what that exactly means, or what that looks like, is unclear. How do these things grow? Like why do they exist? And it's just one of my favorite parts of this series, the Azath houses. That just as an idea, as something that's like disconnected from the rest of the magic, disconnected from the Warrens, disconnected from the gods, something that exists outside of them and is dangerous to them, can swallow theoretically someone like Ikariam and imprison him for eternity, which, by the way, worth highlighting that it has become clear. I mean, I think it was already sort of clear that like this is a guy who's committed genocide single-handedly, but he also, the fact that he could theoretically destroy this house is wild. And I think Varsha, you want to talk about the Nameless Ones. So I think this is a good transition to talking about them and Ikariam's past. We learn that the Nameless Ones lie about shit. And they didn't tell Mappo the full story. It also seems like they're the ones who massacred his tribe. And Ikariam, I was reminded that Ikariam there may be more nuance to his past than we are given reason to believe. And that a lot of the death ascribed to him may not be, I'm not going to say he committed none of it, but I think that there may be more nuance in the events. Just given that a lot of what happened in the past seems to be warped by the Nameless Ones. They are clearly manipulating things, including and especially Ikariam himself. And, you wonder what is their motivation. At first, you kind of think, oh, they're creepy and mysterious, but like probably they're trying to prevent just Ikariam from losing his shit. But Ikariam finds out, right, about his past, and he just becomes suicidal. He doesn't start trying to like murder everyone, So obviously that doesn't mean he's not dangerous, but in summary, I think there's a lot more going on there than we were initially led to believe.
Yeah, and there was something here, I'm trying to find it, about the thing that was taken away from him, right? And was that what triggered his rages? I I mean, we don't know. I just want to see what we can speculate based on the information we have in these chapters. But there is something about something being taken away from Icarium. I think he talks about that, and he wants to find it again. Like almost like that's what is triggering his rages. But or like that's what triggers the loss of memory or whatever that he has to that he experiences once he goes into a genocidal rage. But yeah, the nameless ones are interesting as a concept, and yeah, what you said is absolutely on point about maybe they have been manipulating things to suit them and to gain power of some sort. We don't know what. And we were talking last week. I think I said Warren powering their stuff. It wasn't Warren. It was just like some power that's feeding their stuff. And Mapo thinks he knows what it is. And I thought at the time it had something to do with Icarium and his power, and like maybe something to do with him is feeding the power in their staffs, and that's why they need to do whatever it is they are doing with him. But now Mapo says that the Azath house, the way the roots move remind him of how mobile the staves of the nameless ones were. So their power seems to be something to do with the Azath houses, but we don't quite know what. And Icarium can potentially hurt an Azath house. Like there's just so much interesting stuff going on there. Yeah. And speaking of like
so when you were so you posted in the forum the quote about their staffs and them being powered by something, and Mappo thought he knew what it was and it scared him. And I've initially read that as it was powered by Icarium because I don't want to go into the full depth of why that's why I read it, because that is complicated and would involve later spoilers. But
yeah.
the point being that Icarium has a lot of power and theoretically could be a source of other people's power. He's an ascendant. I don't know if anyone's called him that at this point, but like he clearly, by what we've seen of ascendants, like if Stormy and Gessler are ascendants, like or are about to be, then like fucking Icarium is an ascendant, right? And so he theoretically could be someone's source of power. But you're saying actually how you read that was their staffs are like powered by like the same thing as the Azath.
Now that's what I'm thinking. But before, I think potentially for the same reason that you did, I read it as Icarium's power feeding the staffs somehow.
That's so interesting. What if it's all connected? Because that was one of the thoughts I had as I was reading this, is Icarium has some connection to some sort of outside power, right? Some unknown Warren, or like there's some allusion to that he may be connected to that kind of beastly Warren or that primeval Warren that we saw earlier in the book. At the same time, like there are connections alluded between him and the Azath houses. Not that he's aware of it. And so I do wonder also if it's all connected, if they're all kind of powered by the same source, whatever that source is.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point. Like I can't believe I didn't think of this before, but Icarium, sure, he has his rages, and like I was thinking more of it as the anger powering his like berserker rage, but I think it makes a lot more sense that he's sort of channeling power from somewhere, or he has a lot of inherent power that's only triggered when he goes on these angry killing sprees, I guess.
Right. Like it's like he was cursed to do that.
And
like that's part of what I wonder about the name. Like I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember a lot of what like comes up with them in later books, so this isn't remotely spoilers or anything, but like I wonder if they are the one, like we know that they are the ones who made Icarium have his memory problems, and so I wonder if they are also the ones who like made him a genocidal rage monster. If they essentially set him off, and it's not through like his own will that it happens.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's a connection between. I might be reaching here, but the what is that character's name? Icarus. I don't know how you say it, but the guy who
Yeah.
flew too close to the sun. I wonder if Icarium did something that amounted to flying too close to the sun, and now he's paying for it. But
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Because a lot of the etymology is intentional. I know, like the divers, for example, is like a real term for something like shapeshifters or something, and like from some culture, some language. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting idea.
yeah,
I do
lots.
have. Oh man, there are things I want to. There's stuff
Spoiler thread. Spoiler thread.
Well, I can't even, because some of my thoughts are from, I've been reading Forge of Darkness very slowly, and there are certain things in that make me wonder, have theories about all of this. But anyway, they're very mysterious, and clearly they're not like, we don't just get a big exposition dump about them. So there's a lot to be unpacked and theorized about.
Nice. We may have mentioned this briefly when we were talking about Apsalar earlier, but I love the conversation between Acadium and Apsalar about like just what do you think you're going to do with the memories when you get back? You're happy now. just relax. But I love that. And I love the I love that Crocus figured out by himself that Acadium could be a danger to the Azath houses. How Mapo thinks of him, of how he has grown. It's kind of like watching him change from that, silly boy who went and, tried to return a thing he stole from a girl and hope that she'd fall in love with him while she's at it. To whatever, like he's almost, I mean, I know it says that he's trying to copy Acadium, but it's almost like he's mirroring Apsalar in how he's changing in his personality. Like the quiet, brooding quality that he's acquiring. It's and like he seems to have just become an efficient. I don't want to say killer because I don't think he's killed anyone yet, but like user of knives. but yeah, like that character change is really interesting. I feel like I tended to focus a lot on Apsalar the last time around, but Crocus is just as much, if not more, interesting because he doesn't have the same. I mean, all of his influences for change are external, and Apsalar's are all internal, right? Like Crocus is like his affection for Apsalar, I assume, has to play a big role because he was really heartbroken when she just left, and angry. Like I think his need to protect her, and I guess he's emulating Icarium now, and then just his general need to grow up is just changing him so much, and it's all external influences compared to Apsalar. It's like a very internal growth, but they seem to be changing in very similar ways.
It's such a wonderful, like, subtle portrayal of adolescence with Crocus in terms of like, because adolescence is so much about kind of trying to find your identity and thrashing about and emulating different people or really is people. Sometimes there are people personally, but sometimes they're just people you've heard about. And so, yeah, he imitates Apsalar, he imitates Icarium. He doesn't have his own solidified personality. And he's having to like figure that out, like figure out who he is. But it's hard for him because the one kind of through line between book 1 and 2 is that he's girl obsessed. All his motivation is for a girl. And, in the first, it was much more superficial. It was just Chalice. And then towards the end of the book, he switched his affections over to Apsalar and, fell in love with her. And at least she like returns his affections. But even she is like, I think it's clear from the first half of this book that she does genuinely really care about him, but she also isn't like being nice to him. And like, she's not communicating with him. Like they're not like in a relationship per se, but he continues, he's like dedicated his life to her effectively, and is defining himself in relation to her specifically.
Yeah. And when she says that she tells Icarium, that we're both surrounded by people who don't really know how to help us, like they can't really handle us. I mean, I think she meant her dad, but I think it applies just as much to Crocus.
Yeah, I at first thought it was Crocus, and then it became like, I think she clarifies that it's her dad or something, or that's how Icarium responds. But I also, it does apply exactly to Crocus. Crocus can't protect her. He can't take care of her. But
and it's futile.
Anyway.
Like, he shouldn't even try.
It's sweet. I do. I love Crocus. He's just like such a he's just like a dumb kid, like he has a good heart, but he's just a stupid teenager. And I definitely find it relatable. I have done stupid things when I was crushing on people, and so like it's it's real. I also remember what it was like being a teenager and like not sure who I was, and like I was trying on different hats per se. Steve, were you saying something?
No, I was going to say, I was going to make a point about, because I was kind of, when you mentioned about Crocus, and I thought it back to the coin at the end of Guardians of the Moon, and how we kind of made the parallel between him and Frodo about carrying the ring, and kind of the comparisons there. Not that it's a direct comparison, but of course we're going to relate everything to Tolkien. But in this book, I kind of see some similarities between Frodo, or at least like accepting the responsibility of taking on a different role and sacrificing yourself with Aspalar, and kind of giving yourself to a certain cause and sacrificing identity for what you think is a greater good. I'm not sure if it's a greater good in Aspalar's case, but kind of like giving herself for something else.
Yeah. I mean, it's the chosen one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she is a twisted version of a chosen one. Again, like Felison.
Mm-hmm.
It is really interesting that our two big chosen one characters in this book are teenage girls. It definitely is sort of that's not normally how it plays out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is both. Yeah.
Toblaka even calls Felison the chosen one, right?
Yeah.
There are times where Steven Erikson is not subtle about like kind of the tropes he's playing with, the things he's exploring or upending or subverting, and it is done, with interesting nuances, right? Because so much of Apsalar's character, I feel like, and Felison's, is about them discovering who they really are beyond the mission, beyond the gods, the outside forces imposing themselves on them. Like, who is Apsalar after all these memories, all these personalities? She kind of, in these chapters, tries to assert herself more as like, I'm not possessed, I'm not any of them, and yet clearly they still are affecting her, and so she's having to figure that out, and to I was going to say ascend, but that means something very specific in this series, but like, evolve, grow as a person. Right. And Felison likewise, I think, is trying to do that, but I also feel like she's a lot like Crocus in the way that she just like lets her personality change kind of willy-nilly, depending on who she's with, what the circumstances are.
Yep. Felison, Crocus, Apsalar, all the kids. All the kids trying to be grown-ups.
Don't get Varsha started in kids, because we've heard her thoughts on kids in this.
But I like all the kids in this. Unlike the kids in the other series, I want to give them all good old hugs and tell them things are going to be okay. Those kids I just want to punch. Anyway.
Other cool thing, Fiddler and the shell, the conch payoff, what he thought was the his last bomb the entire time ended up being the conch and, big magic tidal wave. That was cool. Like,
Yes.
not just a tidal wave, it made like all the fucking rats just like wither and die, which was freaky. Great imagery. And then the magic tidal wave came. Very distinctly, like it's an interesting fire and water parallel with, the other big kind of elemental blast. Actually, it's not just fire and water because we also the whirlwind. So we're definitely dealing with kind of like big elemental energies changing our characters, right? You have the whirlwind, you have the warren of fire, whatever that was, and then this big tidal wave.
Ooh,
The
I
Tano
like that.
Spirit Walker.
Steve's gone to the sleep warden, but come up with a clever word. Okay, got us instructions.
So
what was I
Steve has ascended to the sleep warren.
correct? Good word. But is the rat divers we meet here the same as the one that tried to kill our friends in Raraku?
Yes. Grillin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How did he escape the fire? Okay, I guess you just need one rat to escape and continue. Yeah, I guess we don't know the mechanics of the soul division, but maybe just a few could escape and.
Well, here's a theory for you.
Mm-hmm.
He eats Bowden. Bowden was covered in magical fire shit.
Ooh.
And then he comes back stronger. So
Yikes.
maybe that's directly connected, right? Like maybe it is he literally like devoured power and became more powerful because of it.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Oh, now I'm feeling sad about, well, not that the butterflies are diverse, but now I'm like, the butterflies ate Sormo and he's not coming back.
What
They
if they
just
are?
became more powerful butterflies.
Wait, but like what if they are divers?
What if? Yeah, that's yeah. Now I find them more horrifying. if
They literally could be. I mean,
yeah,
they
they
clearly
could be.
act with a certain like willfulness, as Shannon pointed out.
Hmm.
And we've been dealing with divers and soul taken this entire book. Like, just because we're not given who they are doesn't mean that they aren't that. And we've seen they could be like, who knows how, an infinite number of animals.
Yeah.
And they're clearly powerful. So maybe this is some like insane, ancient, like Shannon was saying, like spirit of the land. Like it was, just some ancient divers who's, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years old.
Hmm.
And is just like, brought on by the same path of hands, but isn't necessarily trying for supremacy.
Yeah, just chilling with the chain of dogs, trying to see whose souls it can eat.
Yeah.
Hoping some mages will die.
Exactly.
I think that the butterflies are connected to like this more ancient magic that kind of like predates the Warrens that the Wiccans clearly are practicing.
Right.
With the ravens and everything. So this is just another expression of that.
I agree. It's definitely something even more ancient, right? At least going back as far as the holes, but maybe even older than that.
Yeah. And then also here at Tremor Lore, we lose Messember, whatever. Mappo's friend, the bear soul taken.
Is that the same one that Karsa killed?
No.
No,
This
it's
was
not the one that Karsa killed. He showed up at the beginning of the book, and then kind of Mappo knew him, so they parted ways. And then he did attack. Who did he attack? Oh, he attacked the rats.
The rats.
Right before that whole thing happened. So yeah, maybe he was a better guy than we thought because he was trying to fight off the rat one.
I
and then he
love
finally
Mappo
killed here
so much that I like that part hit me really hard. How sad he was for his friend. Like that actually that hasn't in previous reads. Like I like vaguely remembered a bear getting eaten by the Azath. But like this time I was so deep into Mappo's like character, like feeling what he was feeling. I just that made me really sad.
Hmm.
They were all just like, "Oh my god, it's another soul taken! Like, kill it!" And the fucking hounds just went off on it, and it was like, "No, that's my
They did.
buddy. He's my friend. He's our ally."
Oh yeah, this is also the chapter where they get passed to. This is when
Yes.
Crokus gets him to do that, right? Like call upon your god, because otherwise Acarium's gonna get rid of that Azad house and release everything that's in it. So yeah, that was cool. That show of power from Crokus.
Absolutely. It also is, this is also where we learn explicitly what the plan was for the Shadow Throne and High House Shadow. What they were having Ascarl do was leading all these shapeshifters to the wrong place so that they could get swallowed by the Azad house.
Yeah. Do you think okay, I think we talked about it already, but I wonder if the Azad house is suffering from just the sheer volume of soul taken and divers that it's having to consume.
Its belly is full.
Yeah, getting a bad stomach over it. Or is it something else that is it something else that Shadow Throne is hoping to fix with the with the bringing of the divers and soul taken and Icarium and everybody else here? And they also start to say something about Kellenwed and Cotillian's involvement with Azad houses, and Apsalar, as Cotillian, shuts him up. I forget who. Someone. She shuts them up and says, "No, some things we do not talk about. They are dangerous."
I don't remember what you're referring to, but clearly there's a lot of they were orchestrating this. Shadow Throne in particular was orchestrating this, and I do think I know why. Although I don't know if they say it explicitly in the books or if I just read it online because I was seeking clarification. But I don't want to say that until the book's over. So
Okay. Yes, we'll talk about that. Because their motivations are a little suspect. I don't know what's going on there. Why? Why do they even care about the soul taken and divers, right? Like what do they want to do this for? Why are they trying to get rid of them from the world?
Right. Some of that's also just a question of what is their overarching plan, right? That is very mysterious. And yeah, certainly hasn't been laid out for us. I do think it is also notable that they, it was the hounds that tried to throw Icarium into the Azad house, knock him into the maze, right? Make him get eaten, right? That the implication being, right, the Shadow Throne gave them that order to get rid of Icarium, pull him off the board.
Interesting. Do you guys remember, I'm remembering wrongly, obviously, that all of these things that we're reading about now with Fiddler and co near the Azad house, traversing the maze that it is, and Icarium's discovery of how old he is in that city they were in just before they entered the gate to the Path of Hands or whatever. All of that, in my memory, it was in the last 2 chapters of this book. Instead, It is when there are still 150 pages left in the trade paperback. So maybe more than that, actually. So I'm wondering if I just read the last part of the book as one long chapter. Was that how it felt in my head, or is that just me, or do you guys feel it too, that all of this is coming much earlier than I remember it?
Ditto. Yes. This happened way earlier than I thought. I couldn't believe that once it became clear what was happening, I was like, we have 150 pages left. What is going on? There's so much more that has to happen. How is this going on? Right? So I'm very curious to see what Phil's I mean, because like I remember some of it, but like clearly there are other things that like I don't remember.
Yeah.
That must take up a lot of page count.
Yeah, I wonder if the last part of this book moves so quickly that this felt like being at the part of the at the last part of it, but it isn't really clearly. But yeah, that was interesting. Just I always have that during rereads. I feel like things happen much sooner than I'm anticipating them, but this one feels like on a whole other level. So, are we ready to move on to Kalam and the boat? And
I hope you guys have something exciting or an interesting reading of it or something, because I was bored to tears, and this is not the first time. I do not give a shit about anyone in these pages except for Kalam, and I don't particularly care about his antics dealing with pirates and mutiny and bullshit. I just don't care. This is by far the worst part of the book for me. My eyes glazed. I mean, God, I'm sorry. If Steven Erikson happens to listen to this, I'm sorry, man. You just didn't do it for me. Like, Kalam was already like the shakiest part for me. Not that it gets bad. I just didn't care as much as the other parts. But like, I was invested in Kinib and Manala and things like that. Manala's technically on the ship and all, but like, I just don't care. I just don't care. I was bored. I wanted to go back to Tremor Lore and the Chain of Dogs and, you know, all our people, Felison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this chapter could have been about half its length. I would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
I really didn't have much to say about it. I mean, it's just kind of like an intermission between the two chapters I was reading about. And
Yeah.
I mean, some pirates attack them, they fight them off. And the treasure's a douchebag, they throw him to the sharks. Like, okay.
Exactly. I
mean,
think a big part of it is that I just feel like it could have been much shorter. Exactly like you were saying, Shannon. Like, I just didn't need this many pages, you know. Invest in these characters who are introduced the back into the book and aren't, in my mind, that like complex or interesting, you know. They feel kind of disconnected from everything thematically, emotionally. Like, I'm here for, you know, Kalam. I like him, but otherwise I'm like, get him to Malaz, you know. Let's get the show on the road.
I hate to say it, but I think it's kind of like what Barsha was just saying. We still got like 150 pages left or whatever, so we just needed to do something with him to kind of
Apparently.
stall him out for a chapter, because we don't want him to get to the end yet.
Yeah.
And we don't want him to disappear for too many chapters. So it's like, okay, well, we'll just throw a chapter with them on a boat, and here you go. I mean, theoretically, him and Sulk Ilan, is that his name? Get a little bit closer. I mean, I don't know. I can't really think of anything that really happened here that was like matters.
I mean, there's like I think I'm with you guys. This was one of the less interesting chapters for me, but I'm trying to think. We did get some information here, right? Which maybe we got in a previous chapter, but one, Pomqual is heading it out of Erin and, you know, stealing a bunch of stuff while he's at it. And, and the treasurer is trying to double cross that guy. It's Manala's in one of Pomqual's ships, right? And, well, and I guess we knew from the last chapter that he's taking the fleet with him that they were hoping will help with whatever protection once they get to Erin. So he's even taking away whatever backup defense there is for Erin. So we don't know what will happen once they get there. So their last resort, their last hope for the chain of dogs, it might come to nothing because of whatever's going on here. I mean, I that said, I don't know what the events that transpired here. They were a good way for us to sort of not be told and be shown what jackasses all of these people are in Pomqual's army and the treasurer. But yeah, I'm not sure what the, and most of the Marines died, so I'm trying to think if these people will somehow come back and help the chain of dogs, or if they'll help Kalam in his mission to go kill Lassine. Like, he seems to want to go it alone on that one. Do you think Sak Ilan will help him in that? Like, they seem to be working together, and maybe they'll get to a point where that guy helps him.
He's quick been light. Like, to me, that was the thing that stood out from reading about Saul Kalan, is he's like trying to buddy up with Kalam, and he's a high mage, and he's like, makes quips and shit like that. And even Kalam is not interested in him. He doesn't like him. He's like, you think we can be friends? No, I don't like you. I don't trust you. And so that to me was just what I read, is it's like sort of this like inversion of Quick Ben and Kalam's relationship. But the other, before I hand this off again to Shannon, the other thing that is important is Adjunct Tavor leaves with an enormous fleet. So many that I think Kalam is the one who says, like, the apocalypse stands no chance, and they're gonna, enact a vengeance even bloodier than the apocalypse did. So that is, needless to say, a big deal.
Yeah,
Also
thank you, Carl. I
interesting.
was actually just about to say that. There was one thing in this chapter kind of worth taking forward, and it was that they spotted the fleet. So Tavor's on her way. It's pretty late in the book. Is that going to matter this book? Who knows? But at least we do know, if nothing less, vengeance is on its way.
And, worth mentioning, highlighting, Tavor is on a one-way track to go face off with her sister. And she doesn't even know it, right? She doesn't know that Felisin is Shaik reborn. At this point, Felisin doesn't know that Tavor's coming. So,
yeah.
But she's certain that eventually she will encounter Tavor, because that was her supposed motivation, that the adjunct will come, like the Empress will need to send the adjunct to quell the rebellion.
Absolutely. I think that is circling back to Felisin's bit and Felisin / Shaik, that's part of why I think it's so ambiguous about who is using who between her and Shaik, is that she wants this power not only as sort of a protection for herself, but to destroy Tavor, to get her revenge, right? She can't just do that on her own. She's not going to like wander into a camp and slit Tavor's throat as she sleeps, right? So this rebellion is like tailor-made for her to get her revenge.
Yeah. But it also sort of like she's been seeing these dreams of blood, right? Oh, I guess we can talk about that now that we know what happened to her as Shaik. Like, through their time in the Utataral desert, she had these dreams of rivers of blood, and I think now we can guess that that has something to do with the fact that she's now become Shaik reborn. So what do the dreams signify? And List, we learn, is also seeing dreams of the area across the river, that with all the dead butterflies, and notably Nil and Nether cannot detect any spirits. It seems to be a very dead land, but List is being given some dreams. Same with Felisin. She saw some dreams, presumably about this future. So was she led there to be Shaik reborn? Like, how much of this, it feels very coincidental now, but maybe it's not. Maybe she was meant to go there. I mean, she didn't start seeing the dreams until after she escaped. So it is possible that, she just dreamed so hard about vengeance that it happened. But was there a prophetic component to her dreams?
I think so, yeah. I think she was always meant to come and be Shaik reborn. I mean, the prophecies of Shaik reborn are that Shaik will be reborn,
Hmm.
right? And, so first she had to die, and now she's reborn in Felison. And she's, the prophecies talk about how she'll be like younger again and stronger, and here we are.
Yes. Yeah, I think the sort of interrelationship between who's using whom, what was foretold and what just happened because people were in the right place at the right time. And I guess the alternative interpretations there, which all which you can have for a lot of things in the real world, right? Like I read a book recently. I didn't enjoy it, but I liked the idea behind it, which is like there are these girls who pretend that they are in a fairyland, and it's unclear to the very end whether there is actual magic or if they're just pretending to forget or like being playful. And the possibility that there is actual magic to the end, that kept it interesting. So like I like this. Is it a coincidence, or was she actually like pulled there by the fates? That of course there's magic in this world, so there is a very real likelihood for that. But I like the ambiguity even in this world that has magic.
Absolutely.
So we move on. Yeah, go
One
ahead.
thing I will say about all this, I actually do kind of feel bad for the original Shaik.
Yeah.
With everything we learn in these chapters and stuff, because it's like she's been reborn, but not really, not her. Like, Felison and this whirlwind goddess are being reborn. And then we learn about how she was mutilated by Bidethel and stuff, and it's like, man, she gave up a lot for this cause, and then doesn't even really get to see the end.
Yeah, and she died a pretty ignominious, almost unrepented death, right? Because she died with these two who, as far as we know, barely mourned her. They're like, oops, what do we do now? And we'll just wait for the next one to come along. And then Felison makes this triumphant return, so no one's really mourning her. Not as a person and not as Shaik. That's interesting. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah,
Makes me
didn't
feel like
think
she
of
was
that.
just kind of used, like.
Yeah.
Well, and now is the question, right? Is Felison any different? I mean, she obviously has her own ends, but she's filled with a power that she doesn't really understand, surrounded by people she can't trust, who want certain things from her, and we know for a fact. I mean, the only reason they even keep her around is because she is this symbol to them. It does not bode well.
No, not at all. I forget what happened in chapter 18. I'm almost certain we would have talked about it already. But
I think we did. Most of it was kind of continuation of 18.
So this is where Fiddler uses
16.
that not quite cusser.
Not quite cusser.
Yeah, it picks up with Tremolor. Oh, we didn't talk about so at the end of 16. So Corbeloudom. I wanted to ask you this. So we get built up. Corbeloudom is this tactician, this amazing tactician, and then in the end, it really just comes down to his whole plan was just, hey guys, trust me. Just cross. It's okay. I won't do nothing. And then of course he attacks them, and then and everybody except the nobles seemed to know that he was going to do it. So it's like, does he really deserve that? Reputation of being this amazing tactician, considering that was a pretty weak plan. I mean, anybody should have seen that coming, that he was going to betray him, especially because they knew he was clearing out stuff. But I love the end. I love the end of that chapter when Duiker just almost kills that noble. I forget his name.
Nethpara.
The one with the N.
Nethpara. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that because he's still, I really wish he'd killed him.
Yeah.
Like that would have made me happy if he just killed him right there.
And is
'Cause-
am I remembering correctly that this is the second time that Duiker almost killed the guy? Because or was it a different noble whom he attacks the last
no, this is
time?
the first time.
Okay. There was one, like when the servant was being whipped, doesn't Tweaker like lift someone up by their collar? Or am I remembering something that a different person did? Probably the latter, but anyway, yeah, but that was a great scene. Yeah, about your thing about tactician. I'm thinking about that. That is an interesting point. One, the what was I going to say? Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't know enough about this to say one way or the other, but I feel like being a good tactician might be a large part of like reading people and knowing who will do what and acting around that. So he knew to contact the nobles and
Okay.
the refuge. So I would give him some credit for that, I guess. And the other thing about that, the refugees, are they believing the nobles or the nobles are like, jackasses and they just want privilege. Like I like how the guy was demanding to speak to Coltane after really messing it up for everybody here. But the refugees, they were just listening to the nobles, right? And the refugees, I
Yeah.
think they're tired and it almost seems like they believe that respite will come from anywhere. Like just the idea of it, I think they're probably willing to
Yeah.
accept. But I mean that's my kind of feeble defense for why that tactician thing might apply. Or maybe he was able to take advantage of the fact that these are so exhausted that he can do even something as simple as this and it would work, because Coltane basically gives up, right? He says we can't stop this, so we just have to do what we can to work around it.
Mhm.
So he has forced Coltane into a bad
Which really
position.
says something about Coltane. I mean, the fact that, you know, he knew that this wasn't going to be good. They were going to lose a whole bunch of people, and he still went in to save these refugees who were being tricked by the nobles. He could have just let them die. He could have been like, nope, but he didn't, and that's really something.
Yeah. Yep.
And then not just Coltane, even all the soldiers and
All the
stuff who
soldiers.
went in for this almost hopeless, trying to save the refugees from themselves.
Yeah, it's powerful. And then when the refugees then lash out and like mob the archers at the end too,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, it's leaning into that, sort of animal instinct. It's not a coincidence that Duiker get that like cliche, right? He sees red, and red has been this color of blood, of violence, throughout the book. And yeah, it's powerful stuff. It's tough for me to judge Camestrello just because we don't really know like what his forces are like, other than that they have a lot of like amateurs. But it's unclear to me how they actually function as an army. That said, obviously an ideal leader would be able to make it work. It's tough. I don't think he's like an idiot, but a big part of this is that Coltane is just pulling off a miracle, and not just one miracle, but like miracle after miracle. He really is like, doing something that's, I mean, as we have alluded to, taking him from just like a mortal person to an ascendant. He is on the path to ascendancy. And it's all because he's just like this insane power of will and genius tactician. And so even if you're like a good tactician, what happens if you come up against someone who's just like an all-time great, at the top of their game, driven by desperation, driven, much harder than you are, simply out of necessity.
Yeah, he is a powerful leader, and I don't mean like, in strength, just how he is able to get people to follow, right? Like you were talking about reputation earlier, Shannon, and there was for people on the path to ascendancy and why that matters. There's several instances where we are told that a set of soldiers, they are his, right? They're Coltanes, and they were referring to, I think, Malazan soldiers, not even the Wiccans. So they and he's not doing any of the things that leaders are supposed to do, sort of like, walk around in the camp and make themselves known. I think this was one of Tweaker's observations, that Coltane's not doing any of these things that um sort of will put him in the mind of the people and inspire loyalty in them, but he has their loyalty anyway, which is a very interesting and powerful thing to say about someone.
And it's very him too, right?
Yeah.
Like it would feel wrong. I'm sure he wouldn't be very good at it if he was just going around like trying to like joke with the soldiers and like hype up the refugees, that's not his personality. He's a Wiccan, he's got that dry Wiccan humor, he's just very stoic and he just gets shit done.
Yeah.
That's just who he is. And it is admirable. Not least because he succeeds, right? And because he is noble, right? I mean, fuck the nobles in their games. The real noble here, right, are the Malazans, the soldiers, Coltane, his Wiccans, right? All these people who have effectively dedicated themselves to protecting people who can't protect themselves. And that's something that I think Malazan Book of the Fallen explores at large, is the idea of like the ideal of a soldier and what that means, and the difference between like a warrior and a soldier, or insert any number of terms you can use for like someone who fights wars. And like a soldier is someone, like a true soldier is someone who defends the innocent, who like uses their might to protect the people who can't protect themselves. And right now this army is the definition of that. And even when they should reasonably leave the refugees behind, they go out of their way to protect them. It's powerful stuff. It really is. I can't believe on my first read through I didn't connect with this stuff, because I am eating it up this time.
Yeah, same. I think, and like I said, like a large part of the reason is my lack of fondness for action/battle scenes.
Yeah, same.
But I feel like these almost don't qualify in that category of things that I don't like, because one, it's not really battle scenes in the same way that we had battle scenes in what's the other book? Second Apocalypse, right? It's not quite that. And I think we talked about this before, seeing all of this through Dweker's eyes, I think adds this layer and slight distance that makes it really powerful, especially in this section when he just stops, like he puts himself in the firing range just so he can witness what's going on. He's like, I need to record this, I need to watch, because I need to be able to tell this later on. And that was a brilliant and powerful scene.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one I wanted to talk about. It is when he again selflessly embodies this role of the historian, putting himself in danger to witness so that he can record what happens here and record, because it's right, to honor the people who die, to tell their story, and to tell the story of the people who survived too. And it's powerful stuff.
Yeah. And I won't spoil anything for the later books, but Erikson talks in his interviews about how he sort of spirals around themes, like keeps revisiting the same idea over and over again, and like maybe with different approaches. And I can see even as early as this book, how a lot of this is set up, or how some of these aspects reoccur in later books and have like echoes and reach out as far as the 10th book, which is interesting because I think of this series mostly as 10 standalone books that have like something that's sort of an overarching narrative, but there is a lot more than that that's connecting through all of them, and I'm like able to see that more on, well, I don't think I saw it at all. More is a bad word to use here, but like I didn't see it at all in the first read through, but being able to see that is just like increasing my appreciation for this so much more.
Absolutely. Quotes?
Yes, quotes. So
Quotes?
many from chapter 16. None from chapter
Well, I had
17,
one.
unfortunately.
I had one
not
from
sorry,
chapter
go on.
16 I wanted to bring up.
Yes.
Please.
So I thought that I liked this one. This was gotta be Fiddler. He's thinking, and he one of his thoughts is this. He says a part of him, in defiance of his need for vengeance upon Lucine, actually sympathizes. After all, she bowed to what she perceived as a greater need, one of empire, and chose to sacrifice 2 men she called friends to answer that need.
Hmm.
So, as someone who considers himself a professional Lucine hater, I thought that was really interesting. This is our first glimpse that maybe there was more behind Lucine's move to take over the Empire than what we have seen so far.
Yeah.
That she did it for the greater good. So we'll potentially see what that means moving forward.
Yes, I like that. I think that was Apsalar, the cotillion in Apsalar, probably.
Oh, maybe it was okay.
Maybe, if I'm remembering correctly.
No, it is. It's Apsalar thinking as dancer.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
That's a great one, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to this. Where was it? Yeah. Oh yeah, I love Coltane and what? Yeah, Coltane asks Duiker. He says, "It occurs to me that the sappers have no captain, and they'd rather not acquire one." I'm like, I can relate to that. I'd rather not have a manager. Just give me work, and I'll do it myself. And then they go on to discuss. Duiker says that would be a very complicated deceit, and Colt is like, "Do you think them incapable of it?" It's like, nope. I think they can do that quite well. Oh, and Gessler, when he finds out that Nether is in charge, was like, yeah, it figures. And he says, "I've had my fill of imperious little girls," because he was so tired of Pelican.
Yes, God, yeah, that was great. That made me smile too.
and he also, I think I forget if it's Gessler or Stormy, but tells Duiker, "I wish we still had a certain grumpy old man with us so I could wrap him in ribbons and stuff him down your throat."
Oh, and actually, I do have one from chapter 17. So it was when they spot the fleet. It says they could see the first of the sails now to Vor's fleet. Horse and troop transports, the usual league-long wake of garbage, sewage, and corpses, human and animal. The sharks and Dinrabi thrashing the waves. Any long journey by sea delivered an army foul of temper and eager to get to business. No doubt, enough tales of atrocities have reached them to scorch mercy from their souls.
Mm.
So, like I said, vengeance is on its way. Like,
yep,
they're ready to attack.
What do you think this means when? Yeah, that's a cool quote, Shannon. Thanks. But this, when Stormy says, and we was on fire, you see, and it might have been wet waves we was riding, and again, it might not. Which
I don't know. Stormy's a mess.
yeah.
He's a mess.
If you promote
I
us,
love
sir,
that too.
I will. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
I was just saying I love him. I just
Yeah.
love Stormy and Gessler.
If you promote us, sir, I will punch you in what's left of your face, and Stormy will likely kick you while you're down, sir.
Oh, that's great. That reminds me. Do you have marked where he points out like between you and everybody else you have like 3 eyes
Oh,
and
yeah.
Yes.
something like that was hilarious.
So, yeah, I just thought I'd
When you
mention that for no particular reason.
yeah, he was making fun of Lul.
Oh, and I love this. I love what a big deal is made out of the fact that Coltrane burst out laughing at what Gessler said.
That was great. That's a great moment. We really needed that, you know, like Coltrane. I love Coltrane, but it's good to have that like very human moment there, just to have him finally just lose it laughing, especially amidst like the stress, the tension. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. And I love when Bust, he calls his Icarium horrid jag. I love how irreverent he is to those two. And somehow the use of the word horrid that made me laugh out loud. Like horrid jag. Just being angry at them for no reason. And cruel and mean. So last time we had a manly silence for him in which he said everything he was thinking out loud. This time we had a coy silence in which he was thinking out loud. Cool. I think, yeah, most of my remaining ones are sort of in a similar vein.
Yeah, I come with no quotes this week, partially because I can't find my book. It's hidden somewhere.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've been caring for family dogs alone, so it's been awesome, and also they're a handful.
Do they eat your books or?
No. Oh God. Yeah, in my worst nightmares maybe. But no, I just have been less organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
It's a little, you know, it's like the little like lap dog who takes over, you know. That's kind of the same energy.
Like the lapdog that's the boss of all the catalogs.
Yes, I love that. I've definitely witnessed that happen too. This like little prissy tiny dog take over with all the big dogs who just like for whatever reason obey it.
Yeah. Okay. Last one and then we'll call it. And unless either of you has more. And over it all, the butterflies swarmed like a million yellow-petaled flowers dancing on swirling winds.
That's a really beautiful line.
That's all.
You know what Steve wanted us to come up with a word for.
Oh yeah, we're supposed
How
to
about
say
butterfly?
a word.
Butterfly. Why not?
Butterfly. Okay, butterfly. But we've said butterfly so many times. They could just guess.
Yeah, they're gonna randomly guess butterfly. I'm sure. No, that's the point. We've said it, right? Like it's.
That's true. All right,
Otherwise,
butterfly.
like, yeah, I don't know.
Butterfly.
Cool.
Good word.
Good word. That's the word to write to Steve with. I don't know what email address, but send him a message.
I don't know what he's gonna do. You know.
Or
Maybe,
I don't either.
apparently he's gonna send you stuff. So do it. Storm him with email saying butterfly.
yeah, if you want something, message Steve Butterfly.
Don't know what it is. But cool. Yeah, thank you so much for listening if you are in fact here. We'll see you next week with the next 3 chapters. Bye.
Yep.